Hi Hannah, Karen here, and just having a look at your proposal. So it's coming along very well. I think you've done a lot of work in it now, and it's probably the most complete of all the drafts, so good job on that. It's also really well presented, and you've done a good job on putting the file together with your headings and table of contents and so on, so it looks really well. Just running down through it. Abstract is good, and I like the fact you've put in a few abbreviations. They're often helpful for people. Then you've started off by explaining what a GDV is. I suggest maybe adding a few citations there to that first paragraph just to show where the information is coming from. And you've explained then what a gastropexy is and why it might be done electively. Then you've got your literature review. At the moment, the literature review, genetic factors and splenectomy are grand. Comparison of techniques, probably not critical here. This is reading a bit like a PICO, and maybe it's what you did your PICO on. I'd suggest condensing this slightly, maybe quite a lot, and just briefly describe the surgical procedures, because the issue here is you're not really interested in the surgery, you're interested in the views of the stakeholders. So at the moment your literature review is a bit surgery heavy and perspective light. So see, can you find literature on perspectives of owners or vets or vet nurses in relation to this procedure. There may not be much, but that's fine. But you need to indicate that you have looked for it in your literature review, and that's how you justified the gap that this study is intended to address. So I'd suggest to, comparison of techniques be condensed quite a bit. The cost-benefit analysis as well, you could probably condense that slightly. It's worth putting in though, it is relevant. And maybe make that figure bigger. It's a little bit hard to read. Okay. Then, as you said, we don't have any data in Ireland, but have a look and see, is there any data from elsewhere? And likewise, is there any information on clients' views of something like this or another elective procedure? So you may not be able to find client dog owner perspectives on this particular elective procedure, but what are their views on others? Like, for example, if you look at literature on neutering of dogs, there was a paper I put up in the articles for appraisal. Have a look at that, and you can see that owners may have a variety of reasons for wanting or not wanting their animal to undergo an elective procedure, and they may vary depending on the client. So maybe you could broaden your literature review slightly in that regard. And then I think this is a good point about the role of the vet nurse. Maybe add a citation or two, like if you've a paper talk about nurse clinics, they don't have to be on gastropexy, but just again to indicate that you've got an evidence base to base this on, not just your own experience. Your own experience is relevant, but if you can strengthen it by adding in a few citations, that's helpful. And then you've got your research objectives. I'd suggest putting your research question in here as well. So you'll state that the study would aim to address the following objectives, and then questions that will be used to address these are 1, 2, and 3, or whatever the case might be. Just make it really clear for your reader. Grand. Then you're on to your methods. Your participants, just clarify, are you going to focus on people in Ireland or is it broader? And also, how are you going to distribute them? So you've mentioned vets and vet nurses through Veterinary Nurses Facebook group and Vet Voices Ireland. That's grand. And then you've got the Kennel Club. When you talk about clients on social media, again, can you be a bit more specific? Is there any particular group you intend to target? Also, I don't know, if you work in practice, would you have the option to send a survey out to your clients, for example? I don't know, that might be an option. And we look at it from there. Okay. Now, just in relation to your consent, with a survey, you're not going to be meeting the people before they fill out the survey. So you don't have a chance to give them a leaflet, have them read it and give it back to you. So you'll have to put the information about the survey on the first page of the survey, and then there's a box that says, I've read the above information and I understand what I'm doing and I consent to take part and that my information can be used. So you need to update the paperwork to reflect the method by which people will actually be encountering the information. Okay. Now, the other thing is, we'll talk about this a bit further on, anonymity. If you've mentioned later on doing some interviews, but you haven't mentioned that in here. And to be honest, I think when you're surveying 3 stakeholder groups already, it's unlikely you're going to have time to do interviews. And I just think it's going to complicate the data collection and the ethics significantly if you're collecting people's personal data, like their email address, so you can contact them, because then your survey is no longer anonymous. So I would suggest just take that out and focus just on the surveys. You should have enough data to complete the project, and you can state that in your suggestions for further research, follow-up interviews, or with focus groups with stakeholders could be relevant. Okay. Then you've got your data analysis. So most of your data is going to be quantitative. So just looking at your collection here, looking at the surveys themselves, like they are primarily quantitative. So maybe that's just a typo. But if you look at them here, the clinician one, they are going to be primarily quantitative. Just having a quick run down through them. What type of practice? I'd suggest for other, put in a box so they can fill in other. And then I'm not sure of the value of collecting the region. I would suggest leaving that out. It's so broad that it's not going to be helpful, so I'd suggest leaving that out. And then I'm not sure, is this for vets and vet nurses? Like a vet nurse, obviously, you'll have to change the wording. Like the vet will be performing the procedure, the nurse will be assisting. So just the way it's written, if that was a vet nurse answering this, it's a bit unclear. It kind of implies that they're primarily doing the surgery, which I don't think is what you're asking them. Reasons for dogs that didn't go for surgery. Now again, if you think about a vet nurse answering this, they won't be the one performing the gastropexy. So you might need to have separate surveys for vets and vet nurses, or have branching within it. But at the moment, it's just a little bit confusing for a vet nurse to answer this. And I think rather than routinely perform yes or no, it's like, do you perform a gastropexy following GDV survey? Never, occasionally, often, always might be more helpful, because routine implies always. It's a little bit unnuanced. Then, if performing, I think, a gastropexy following GDV surgery, ask them what method they use. If you don't perform a gastropexy, ask, again, probably take out routinely, ask them why not. Splenectomies, grand job. Again, think about nurses doing this. And then your prophylactic gastropexy criteria. Have you ever performed one? If what method? Again, think about a nurse trying to answer this. Does the practice offer it? Why not? Do you offer it? Now, I wasn't sure here. When you say offer referral, do you mean referral for a GDV surgery or referral for a prophylactic gastropexy? I'm assuming it's for a prophylactic gastropexy, but just clarify that. And then rather than routinely, do you have conversations with dog owners about deep-chested dogs? Put in never, occasionally, sometimes, always, perhaps, and it'll be easier to get it out and pull out the information. When do you have it? When do you think it should be done? With your recurrence rates here as well, someone might think that the recurrence rate is higher than 15%, so I think you need to allow for that. So at the moment, you're forcing them to select from one of these numbers, which is kind of a leading question. So I'd suggest maybe adding in other, or just thinking about changing this to allow a broader range of opinions to be offered, because they may be wrong, but that's still their opinion. I wasn't sure how question 23 and question 24 were different. I suppose it's just a dilatation. How will you know the animal has that? Do they present? I probably don't know enough about small animals here, but that just wasn't that clear to me. Now, 25 is a leading question, because you're asking them, it has benefits. What are they? So maybe either have changed this to have 2 questions. In your opinion, what are the benefits? Second question, what are the disadvantages? And then, in your opinion, what are the possible benefits or drawbacks, or what are your views on a prophylactic gastropexy? It's just a little bit leading the way it is currently. Do you see any issues with the prophylactic gastropexy? Maybe they're intended to be one after the other, but there's a little bit leading, I think, at the minute. Okay, so that's the clinician one. Owner one then. You're on the right track here with your consent form on the first page. Now, you can't, be careful what you promise. This is an anonymous survey, so you can't take out the information easily. If you decide to collect their name and data so you can remove it, that's going to make the ethics much more difficult, so just think carefully about that. That's fine. We can work on that. Then again, probably take out what province. I don't really see how the information is going to be useful. If they haven't owned a dog, are you going to eject them from the survey? Do you currently own a dog? Category. Probably ask them as well, what if they own more than one dog? Think about that. And can they have, like, I presume you want to know, is their dog at risk of developing a GDV? So is large breed, giant breed enough, or do you need to ask them about the shape of the dog's chest? I'm not sure. Maybe just think about that. Because they might have a deep chested dog that isn't a particular breed, like a lurcher maybe. So just think about maybe how you're going to tease this information out in terms of analysis. Male or female, neutered. Temperament, I wasn't sure why this was in here. Literature review didn't make reference to temperament, I don't think. So maybe I'm missing something here. I'm not sure why that's in there. Has your dog had surgery? I presume by this you mean all surgeries. So maybe specify ever had any surgery before, e.g. spayed or neutered or so on. Or if you mean just GDV, specify that. I'd probably put 12 before 11. Have you heard of it? Have you ever had a dog that had it? How did you hear about it? Now, you'll have to explain what a splenectomy is. Has your dog ever had their spleen removed? If they already said the dog has had surgery, they're going to have to answer that twice, so that might be a bit irritating to fill out, to just think about that. Explain what gastropexy is. So it's a surgery where the stomach is sewed to the wall of the abdomen so it can't twist or rotate, maybe. Has it ever had a prophylactic gastropexy? Again, probably reword that slightly to make it clearer, and you can only have it done once, so I'd probably leave out at any point. Do you know what a gastropexy was? Maybe put that earlier. Now, if their dog hasn't had GDV or bloat, they'll need to be able to skip this. Has it have surgery? Did it have the spleen removed? Did it survive? Is your dog neutered? And I think we're back to some overlap here as well. So they're coming together. Just need a bit of work. Like you said, at this stage they're probably longer than they're going to be in the end, and that's fine. Okay, back to your document. So yeah, we'll have to think about the anonymity and the surveys. You just kind of mentioned the surveys with interviews here. I'd probably suggest taking that out. Your analysis of your survey will require a bit more elaboration. It's probably going to be mostly descriptive statistics. You may do some correlations to see, for example, if owners of deep-chested dogs are more likely to think it's a good idea to have one than the owner of a non-deep-chested dog. So just think really carefully about your data collection. Will you be able to differentiate those two groups of people, those who own deep-chested dogs who are at higher risk versus those that don't? Justification needs to go in. Ethics, again, the information leaflet won't be sent out in advance. It'll be part of the survey, so just clarify this to make that. Again, like, think about it, just giving people contact details. You can put that on the front page of the survey, but it won't be provided in advance. It'll be at the time that they go to fill it in. And then you've got to, I think you're going to have to just go for anonymous. We might change that. Expectations. Good list of references here. They're properly laid out and fairly comprehensive. And your surveys are going to go in here. Your ethics forms. Now again, your ethics form and information sheet are going to be condensed onto the front page, but you will need to fill in this ethics application, which you'll get to. And we went through that in class on Tuesday, so hopefully that's fairly straightforward. So yeah, it's coming along well, Hannah. Done a lot of work on it. You're really at the stage now, kind of starting to iron out the little details and condense it down a bit. So you're well on track with it. Good job, and I look forward to seeing the finished piece of work. Thanks very much.